Hello and thank you for tuning in to another Hobby Porter video. Today we're looking at the ToolkitRc M8 Multifunction Charger. So what I'm going to do in this video is just give you an overview of the product. We do have samples going out to our reviewers and they'll probably go into more detail. But today I'm just going to run over the features and give you an idea of what this is all about. So we'll go over the outside first. On this side we've got the balance port and output for batteries. On the rear we've got the DC input and two cooling fans. On this side we've got a USB output for powering iPhones and iDevices or any USB powered device, and a PWM output. Now this port here actually doubles as your software upgrading port. You use the included USB cable and you connect that to your PC, and this device will show up on your computer as a USB drive, and you simply delete the file that's on there, copy the new firmware in its place, and that's it, you're done. So no fancy updating software or process or anything that can go wrong. Basically, if you know how to copy a file onto a USB drive, you can update this without any hassles or worrying about bricking it or anything like that. Okay, so what we're going to do for the purpose of the video is we're going to take just a battery and use that as our DC power supply, or you can use your own DC power supply depending how you want to set up the product. So we'll go ahead and get the battery connected and then I'll run through some of the features. Okay, so let's go ahead and connect the power. There we go, we've got ToolkitRc. ToolkitRc.com is the website you can go to check for user manuals and firmware updates and things like that. Alright, so let's jump into the charger function. Now you've got on the side here 5 presets that you can program yourself. So let's just go ahead and program one. First thing you choose is your battery type, so let's choose, say, LiHV. You can set your voltage. The default's 3.5, but if your battery manufacturer has different specs, you can adjust that. Next thing you can choose is your cell count. You can leave that on auto, which will detect from the balance port, or you can manually set that. So let's say set it for 3 cell. Charge, just set that here. Discharge, you can set that as well, and then down the bottom here you've got your standard charge modes, so storage, discharge and charge. So super simple. If you've ever used any battery charger before, you should have no trouble with this at all. Exit out of there and you can see that it's saved that in that second slot. So whatever you modify will be saved and it stays there basically unless you override it with something else. Alright, so if you want to now change that one, you can just go back in and we'll change that to say 2 cell LiPo, 1 amp, discharge half, and there you go. So that's the charging functions. Pretty straightforward. You should have no trouble with that at all. Okay, let's move over to the measurement functions. Right, so the first one you've got here is PWM. Now this is for a PWM input, so you would use this for testing, say an older receiver. You'd be testing one of the PWM output channels connected to the input here. So whatever stick input you gave on the radio, you would see a reading here. You could also use it for projects or Arduino, things like that. Anything that's outputting PWM, basically, you can put that output here and then see what it's doing on the screen. Okay, the next one you've got is PPM and S-Bus. Now these are kind of similar. PPM you've got 8 channels there. S-Bus you have 16 channels. And you also have some extra S-Bus related information. So what this does, again, if you connected, say, a receiver from the S-bus or PPM output into the input here, whatever stick input you give on the radio, you're going to see it show up on the screen here. So the idea there is, say you're setting up a mini quad with a Betaflight or etc. type controller, and you're having some trouble and you want to troubleshoot, is it a receiver problem or is it a problem with the board? You can test your receiver here and make sure it's functioning correctly. So just help you with troubleshooting and sort of process of elimination. Okay, the next thing we've got here is the battery testing. So let me just grab a battery for that, and we'll connect the battery here. So just plug in the balance port. You can see there we get the voltage reading. Okay, so battery's connected. Functions we've got here, there's a built-in balancer. So you can start a balance cycle. There you go. This battery is pretty much balanced already, so it's not really much to see there. Then we can change this to internal resistance, and we can do a test there. So start the test, give it a moment or so, and there you go. You get a basic test report that shows you the internal resistance of the battery, which is really helpful if you want to make sure you're using the best batteries in your fleet of batteries, or perhaps you just want to keep an eye on the health of the batteries. The last function we've got here is they call it ESC, but this is basically a simple watt meter, good for up to 15 amps. So it's not the kind of watt meter you're going to use on a large electric aeroplane to test different propellers, etc. This is more for testing, say, the current draw of all your servos or project work. So it's just a basic watt meter. It gives you a 15 amp rated capacity, and like any watt meter, basically you put your power supply, which is the battery in this case, and then your load on this side, and away you go. You're going to get a watts display, and amps, which is your current draw, and things like that, some basic information. Alright, and then we go over to output. Now again, this is fairly similar to what I've explained before, but pretty much everything's in reverse. So PWM output, probably the easiest way to describe this is it's like a servo tester. So you've got a manual which lets you manually input the value, US value, so which will be moving your servo. And you've also got automatic modes, and this would be cycling your servo. And you can program the settings on where you want it to start and end and things like that. And then PWM and S-bus, again, like I was describing before, but in reverse. So basically the charge is going to act like your receiver would act. So this means the charger is now going to output S-bus or PPM. Again, you can use this for troubleshooting flight controllers, or if you want to try and work out if you've got a bad receiver, or just anything that you need to generate a signal, but perhaps you don't have an ESC on hand or something like that. Last thing we've got here is power. Now this makes the charger work like a power supply. So you can set your voltage, so all the way down to 1 volt, which is really handy if it basically works like a desktop power supply, which is probably good for if you need 5 volt, for example, you don't have a back handy, or you're just doing electronics projects and you need an adjustable power supply with also a maximum amp limiter and things like that. So yeah, that's the basic power supply functions. There's also some modes in here for charging some DJI products like the Mavic, Phantom, Inspire, etc. They do require a proprietary plug set that will be released at a later date, so you can keep an eye out on ToolkitRc.com for updates and information on that. And we'll back out, and so that's your measurement and output tools. Next we'll have a look at settings. Okay, so the last thing we'll go over is the settings. The settings are pretty standard, what you'd expect to find on most chargers. The lowest input is good if you're running a battery as your power supply. That'll make sure that you don't overdraw the battery, make the voltage of the battery too low and damage the battery. Input power, safe temp, charge time. Again, the sort of things you'd expect to see on most chargers. You can set your backlit amount here, so if you want to brighten or dim the display. Contrast, buzzer, idle beep, hub support, you choose your language here, and then default confirm. If you confirm this, what that'll actually do is just reset the battery save data that you've done. So we can do that for the sake of argument. We'll go back, and you can see they're cleaned out, so we can start adding battery programs back there. You don't necessarily have to do that though. If you want to change, if you've made a program here and you want to change it to something else, you can just go in and pick it again, and whatever you used last in that slot will stay saved in that slot. So there you have it. That's the ToolkitRc M8 multifunction charger. Again, just an overview for you today. We have got samples going out to our reviewers, and I expect that they'll probably go into some more detail and do a few more things with the charger so you can get a better understanding. As always, please like and subscribe. It does help us out a lot, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye.